first. And on that note, I think we'll move on. For those of you who don't know, Jennifer Peoples has been with us for a few months now, participating in different events. And the subject that you're going to talk about today, I kind of want to be up front. It's a contentious issue. It covers religious issues. It covers social issues. It covers medical issues. Penn and Teller covered it on their Showtime special Bullshit. And I'll let you go ahead and let everybody know who you are by way of introduction, and we'll just jump right into cut straight to the chase.
Okay, well put. Okay, my name is Jennifer Peoples, and as Matt said, I've been participating with ACA for a few months now. I've actually been an atheist for a long time. I don't even remember how long ago it was that I lost my belief, but I think it was probably sometime in my college years. And I did come from a religious family. In fact, my father, prior to his death, was studying to become a Methodist minister. So, and then I've got my fair share of fundy nut jobs in the family. So,
join the club.
Yeah, I know I'm in good company here. So, anyway, that's my background as far as how I came to atheism. The topic I wanted to discuss today was male circumcision. Which
actually, one of the reasons that we were prompted to do this was listener mail. There were some people who emailed into the TV show, said, hey, have you ever covered this topic? And I said, we have, but not really in depth and not as part of the show. So your mail matters, so we're covering a subject that somebody wanted to talk about, and it's something that we think is important to discuss, at least to get information out to people as well. So.
Absolutely, because as you said, there is a religious aspect of this that can't be overlooked. In fact, it's the religious aspect I think that I find most disturbing, because we have a very small religious minority in this country that's actually foisted this practice upon the majority of American males. One of the things that prompted me to investigate circumcision is that I found out my partner and I were expecting a son. And in order to make an informed decision about what's best for him, we felt we had to do our due diligence and investigate this further. And just as a way of informing everyone where I come from on this, I come from a family where there is no tradition of male circumcision. Most of the males in my family are intact. And my partner comes from a family where most of the males are circumcised. And so we had a very different perspective on this. Her view was that this is normal, this is how it's done. Mine was, well, no, this is not normal, because the only male that I knew of in my family who was circumcised was my brother. And he was circumcised entirely without parental consent. The doctor did it, never asked or anything, and that was the way it was done prior to about the 1970s. So we felt that we owed it to our son to make an informed choice here.
Right.
And so in researching this a little more, sort of stepping out of my family background, what I found was that this is really an ancient blood ritual that got medicalized. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that it was a familiar practice for a lot of Jewish physicians. And so they brought this notion into the medical mainstream. And of course, a lot of it came to be during the Victorian era. And in fact, prior to about 1870, there were very few men in the U.S. who were circumcised. After about 1870, it started to increase. And then post-World War II is when it really started to become very common. And there are lots of reasons for that, but a lot of it had to do with Victorian notions around purity and preventing masturbation.
Yes.
But there were lots of other reasons that were invented. There are some historical claims about circumcision that are just, we look at them now and they're pretty fantastic. The main one was that it prevented masturbation. Okay. So anyone who's ever either been a teenage male or been around a teenage male, you know that kryptonite couldn't prevent that. So, so that was a bogus reason up front. It also reduces sexual sensation, and this is something that Jewish medical philosophers dating back to the 1st century, they put forward this idea that it did reduce sexual sensation, and they thought this was a good thing because it kept the man's mind off of sex and on to prayer. So it was promoted specifically because it reduced their sexual sensation. The other thing that was promoted is that it promotes hygiene, basically that it's easier to keep clean. And there's some interesting background on that I'm going to get to in a minute. But the other thing that came into vogue after sometime in the early 20th century was that it could prevent all kinds of diseases. And some of the diseases that it was supposed to prevent included tuberculosis, insanity, plus a whole lot of other vaguely defined mental illnesses, epilepsy, sexually transmitted diseases, the latest of which is HIV, but it included things like syphilis, and also penile cancer. And the penile cancer thing is very interesting because we now know that that's closely linked to exposure to human papillomavirus, right, and also smoking. And
you had to include that.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, when you mention insanity, it reminds me of like the wellness center phases and these quack doctors who would, they'd prescribe. Essentially, they were vibrators to cure female insanity.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you there, buddy. But I mean, it's like we've come so far. We've gained a good understanding, not a perfect understanding, of the universe we live in, the human body, how things work. But we don't have to go back very far at all to find just medical nonsense that seems so obvious now. There's plenty of medical nonsense now. I mean, you get your homeopathy and acupuncture, sure, and chiropractic and whatever else. But I mean, we're talking about things like phrenology, where you're reading the bumps on somebody's head to determine whether or not they're likely to become a mass murderer. So this whole insanity thing is, it was sexual tension, and we're just saying that these women are going nuts. We better give them something to do. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I guess you can cure anything as long as you're looking at it through this lens of equal insanity. But.
Yes, and getting back to the STD and the penile cancer thing, the whole thing with the penile cancer thing is that circumcised men can and do get cancer of the penis. However, it's such a low incidence, especially in the U.S., that if you were going to do a prophylactic surgery to protect a male from some form of cancer, then you'd probably want to do a double mastectomy on him at birth, because male breast cancer is more prevalent than penile cancer. So clearly there was no science behind that. And in fact, the American Cancer Society does not recommend circumcision as a preventive measure for preventing penile cancer. And in fact, in terms of the medical claims, there's no major medical organization anywhere in the world that recommends routine neonatal circumcision.
And this discussion's come up quite a bit. One of the reasons why we were happy to talk about this is because we've talked about it amongst ourselves at the various ACA outings. But in doing the research, not only do you have these kind of silly, I love to call them the wellness center things, because to me that word is just funny. Those kinds of ideas. But you also have, like in the 70s, the American Association of Pediatrics came out and basically said there is no medical justification at all for doing routine neonatal circumcisions. And then they reaffirmed this in 83, and then other groups jump on board. And so for the past 20, 25 years or so, we've had pretty much a general medical consensus that regardless of whatever benefits do or don't exist with regard to circumcision, there's no medical justification for circumcising infants.
Right. And that really is what this came down to as far as making our decision for our son, was that, do we as parents have a right to choose something for him that he may not choose for himself when he's an adult? And even if there are medical benefits, such as the claimed protection against HIV, that's a decision that he can make when he's an adult, and he can examine his own sexual practices and decide for himself what's the best choice for him. And so our view on this is that we've simply preserved his choice for when he's older. I guess I wanted to go ahead and talk about history of circumcision,
Sure.
how we got from where we are today, or how we got to, to this point in time where